always looking for things that we can do to help keep us moving and doing the crazy things that we want to do, maybe like juggling on a balance board. One proven strategy is regular stretching. So here's my routine. Stick with it. It'll do wonders for you. Lumbar spine extension. Just put your hands in the small of your back. Put a little pressure with your fists on your back and just arch backwards. That's just a little brief one. Some of these things are going to be really slow. This is just gently warming up the spine, so it's good to do it in the mornings. I give this to lots of people. We sit at a computer all day, some of us. We need to shrug those shoulders up, pull them towards our ears, roll them back, get our shoulders moving, and let them drop again. So that's an excellent one when you're sitting at your desk or during this little routine. Next, we're going to get some lateral bend in the spine, so some movement to the side. So you just keep your feet where they are. You push one hip out to the other side and just arch to one side. You should feel this up the small of your back, right up to the inside of your right arm in this case, but inside of your arm, just both sides. Then arms out and give a little trunk rotation. So feet stay facing forward as much as possible. Keep your hips facing forward because you want to get that rotation from the hips up and into the rest of your spine. If you do turn your hips like I am there, you get a little stretch in the hips also, which is not a bad thing. The goal of all of this is just warming up the muscles and introducing motion at the spine. Lots of times you'll see me do that little shoulder shrug in between to just shake things out a little bit. Now this one, we're getting a little bit of muscle activity going more than just the stretch, but it's just elbows out to the side, arms at 90 degrees, and practice bringing elbow to the opposite knee. A little rotation in the spine, contracting some of the abdominal muscles, working on your balance a little bit. Just a few times each side there. Shrug the shoulders, shake it out. And then we're going to move on to trunk rotation again. This time, arms just down at your sides and get a twist there again. This is not an exhaustive stretch. There's definitely things you can do to modify it or change it. But if you're not doing much stretching at all, this is a great way to limber up the spine, get the blood flowing to the muscles that are going to support you throughout the day. So after a couple of rotations there, now we're moving on to our neck stretches. So chin down towards your chest and hold for usually 8 to 10 seconds. And then you go off at about 45 degrees to one side and just let your head fall down. You should feel this one from the top of the shoulder right up into the back of the head. Go over to the other side. This part of the video is going to seem a little bit long to watch. We're going to repeat these neck stretches 3 times. But I promise if you do it, you're going to feel the benefits. You're going to feel better mobility. Is it always going to be pain-free? No. Sometimes it'll accentuate little sorenesses that you're having, but it's always going to help to increase mobility. So with the backwards one there, some people might struggle with tilting their head all the way backwards. Depending, sometimes if you have a little bit of arthritis in some of the joints of the neck, that might be uncomfortable. Don't push too far past your comfort limits, but it is okay to go into slight or mild discomfort as long as it's not a sharp pain. So with the side to side, I like to look as far as I can comfortably for about 8 seconds and then for 2 seconds. So if I count to 8 and then I count 9, 10, give a little extra push. With the lateral bend, just ear to shoulder, you can raise your hand up like I'm doing there and give a little bit of overpressure. You're not pulling with your hand, it's just slight overpressure to give a good stretch up the side of the neck. And to the other side. So the benefits of stretching has been studied for years. There's always a little bit of controversy or dialogue or discussion as to the best ways to do it, and what's going to give you the maximum benefits and outcomes. That's a lot to cut through. I find there's fads that happen, and sometimes we come full circle and go back to where we started. But the bottom line is that a movement practice and stretching. Now, when I say movement practice, you could think of yoga or Pilates. Or just a lot of different stretching techniques. Some is passive stretching with a partner. Some is dynamic stretching. But the bottom line of all of it is keeping the body moving is always beneficial to longevity and being able to keep moving the way that we want to. So many activities that we're involved in today in the world are encouraging us to lose flexibility. Think of sitting at a desk all day, sitting at a computer, standing in a static position, whether it's at work on an assembly line, or you're a hairdresser standing up around the chair, or you're a chiropractor leaning over patients on a table all day, or a massage therapist. There's a lot of things that we do that are encouraging us to lose flexibility. So when we put in a little bit of focused time, deliberate time into increasing our range of motion, stretching out our muscles, moving our joints, it's going to pay dividends for future health. Now, I think I might have lost track there, but if you're following along and doing this, we go through all the neck stretches 3 times. I think this is the finishing up the second set, so we have one more to go through here. One thing I wanted to touch on is hydration. If we have muscles and joints, frankly, that are well hydrated, this stretching is more beneficial and is going to do better for us. So I read a book recently. It's called The Ripple Effect. It's by Greg Wells. He's a PhD. He's also written Which Comes First, Cardio or Weights? Excellent book. But he talks about watering your organs. I really like that. My wife is a big proponent. Every morning she says to the kids, "Did you water your organs today?" So get up and get hydrated. And watering your organs with water is different than getting up and going for that first cup of coffee or tea or what have you in the morning. The caffeine can be dehydrating. So you want to think about making some space for just water, to really water your organs, water your muscles, water your brain, and that'll be beneficial with the stretching or movement routine as well. A lot of the joints that we're working on moving here are what's called synovial joints. A synovial joint is a fluid-filled joint. So that's full of synovial fluid, which is largely water. So we need to stay hydrated in order to make all these stretches as beneficial as possible. So if you're with me here still, we're working on the neck. I think it's really important to give the neck a good stretch each day. That's why we go through all of these range of motion stretches 3 times. I talk to people about it a lot in the office, and it can seem daunting just to run each set 3 times, but what you put in is what you get out. Okay, so now we're moving on past the neck stretches. We're going to get into one of my favorites, which is the posterior chain work. I have another video that focuses just on this stretch, which is called the Founder. It's from a colleague of mine. He has foundationtraining.com, where he goes through these posterior chain-based stretches in great detail. This is one that I like the most. So as you see, we started out with your hands back behind you. Now I've moved into a position where I'm kind of balancing like the weight. I'm trying to shift my weight backwards as much as I can, but I hold the arms out in front of me to counterbalance so I don't fall over backwards. Then I slowly reach for the floor, getting a stretch now from the heels all the way up the back of the body, back and up, right up and even into the back of the head and neck. Now, if you would have seen me stretching, doing this stretch 8 to 10 years ago, I would have been about 8 to 10 inches from my toes. So it has been very beneficial in helping me to improve my flexibility in both my hamstrings and in my lower back. So you come back up into the first position, hold that again. You should feel a lot of tension in your lower back and still a stretch on the back of the legs here. Up into the second position. See, you don't have to balance on your heels like that, but I'm just trying to maximize the stretch. And then push the hips forward and relax. So that takes about 30 to 40 seconds. That's called the founder, a good posterior chain stretch. Now we're moving down onto the mat, going into what I call the cat and cow stretches. I didn't name those. They've been called that for years, but this is the cat stretch, where you're just arching your back up as high as you can, rounding it right from your tailbone up to the top of your neck. Now dropping into the cow stretch. The cows kind of let their bellies go, and they get a lot of extension in the back. So that's what I'm trying to do there. And it always feels good after doing the cat-cow to go into a child's pose, where you sit back as much as possible onto your ankles, reaching forward. You get a good stretch through the lower back, right up through the thoracic spine and into the shoulders. So I'm really reaching forward there and trying to sit back onto my heels at the same time. And I move my hands again, so I try to be so my back is somewhat parallel to the floor, and going to the cat stretch again. Getting good rounding through the back and flexion. If you want to accentuate that, you can hang your head. I was holding mine up there, but you can also drop your head down. And then as you see, shifting where instead of trying to arch the back, or instead of trying to round the back, now I'm really arching right from the hips and up through the shoulders and raising the head up a little bit there. So just extending through the whole back and back into child's pose. This one feels really good after you've been doing the other two, to just stretch, reaching forward with the arms, sitting back onto the heels, and just resting in that position. Active rest where you're still stretching. Now, some of these poses may be difficult for people if you're dealing with certain conditions. This is good for general, overall, just where you may be suffering with a little bit of pain in the back at times, but it's usually muscle or joint related. This is going into an extension pose here. You can go on your elbows like I was initially, or you can raise up onto your hands or fully lock the arms and get that extension. Now this may be challenging for people who have more significant arthritis in your lower back. If it's too painful to do this, then you back off. That's when you'd go back to your elbows, just a slight bit of extension. This is actually good for people if you're dealing with some disc issues. It can be good to work those extension exercises. And we go back up into child's pose again. Stretching things out. But yeah, if you have difficulties with any portion of this stretch, you can just talk to me about what we could modify for you. But this is, if you're not suffering any significant chronic pain, this is a good routine to just encourage overall movement. Now, I like to repeat the founder. So here, I'll talk you through it a bit more. So as much as possible, your weight is shifted backwards in your feet. You can see I come up onto my heels a little bit at times. You don't have to do that, but the weight should be backwards. Nice arch in the lower back. And then as you bring the arms up in front of you to 45 degrees, you're trying to shift the weight backwards even more. You're creating tension between the hamstrings and the back muscles. And then once again, reaching forward. It's not just dropping down, but it's reaching forward as you go, trying to get as much of a fold in half at the waist as you can. So I want to take a little pause at the bottom there, get a good stretch. This one feels really good, especially when you used to not be able to touch your toes at all. And you slowly come back up. Once again, arms behind you in that first position, maybe another 8 to 10 seconds. And then reaching forward again, dropping the weight back, getting that last final stretch on the hamstrings and in the small of your back. Stand up, push your hips forward. There is the founder for the second time. Now we're going to go into a nice psoas stretch. Psoas is your major hip flexor. So you're going to put one foot back behind you in kind of a lunge position. You can stretch out as far as you can backwards. And then you stretch your body, you raise your hands up above your head and stretch toward the side of the forward foot. So the stretch in that one was up the right-hand side of my body. Getting into the psoas, which is the muscle in the front of your hip and comes up into your spine. So now I'm stretching the left side, where you just bend over. It's a balance exercise too, so be careful. Put some supports around you if you need to. You're going to get a good stretch up the left side of your body on this one and down into your hip flexor or psoas. Excellent. We're going to repeat again. So we're going to do a couple on each side here. So hands up nice and high, get a high stretch, and then go over to the side. Feeling that stretch all up the side of your body and down into your hip once again. Now we're going to switch to the other side once more. And once again, you're trying to step back as far as you can, keeping both feet facing forward, trying to keep both feet with the whole foot on the ground, heel and forefoot. You'll tend to want to pull that back heel up. But if you can keep it down, it's a better stretch overall. So for those of you who have stuck with me to the end here, congratulations. I should have a prize for anybody who watched the whole video. But that's some excellent stretches. We're just going to roll it out a little bit. If you have any questions about this, let me know at the office. I hope you find some benefit in this. And I know you will if you do it. So happy stretching, everyone. Have a great day.